Dr. Lou on all fronts. And I trust that everyone is on the front line tonight. We are building upon somewhat of a continuation of last week as we were addressing and having conversation about the issue of national sovereignty and, of course, placing it in the context of course, CARICOM. I trust that everyone is on the front line tonight. Seeking a full membership into CARICOM. Are building upon somewhat of a continuation but hey, with the events going on, of course, as we were addressing and having conversation about the issue of national sovereignty in Venezuela, and the recent visa restrictions. We're going to get into some of that there. We're discussing the United States of the Caribbean. Yeah, the United States of the Caribbean. Diaspora, immigrants, and immigrants. It's open mic for you tonight. And look, here's the format for us tonight, right? I'm doing something comparable to what I did last week. I'm going to share a clip. And I'm going to be sharing a clip interview of Ambassador David Commission. This is the ambassador to Barbados. And he did a very interesting interview on Wake Up Belize radio program in Belize by Brother Nuri, discussing, of course, the implications of the United States government's actions toward Venezuela. And, of course, the Caribbean response or CARICOM members' responses. So we're going to have a clip on that. Also, he's not confirmed yet. Ambassador Commission, David Commission, did propose next week, and I know he is finishing on that's the 21st, and I think at the time we have our show, he will be disembarking from a flight. So it's a question of timing, and I'll probably know something probably by Friday. But I have extended to him, if we don't do next week, we'll do the following week. So he is on board of doing an interview. And what has been proposed to him is an interview via Zoom. And I want to do it in a webinar. And this is going to be somewhat of a invitation to those of the Caribbean community to be a part of that webinar. I will also probably network with CURB because it has some of, reconciliation implications. And so we want to have some discussion about that. The line is lighting up. Overseas, just pause for a moment. We're going to follow the script tonight. And certainly you will have the opportunity to certainly give your perspective. But when we say United States of the Caribbean, out of many, one people. And you all know whose national motto that is. Each endeavoring, all achieving. Together we aspire, together we achieve. Pride and industry. Ever conscious of God, we aspire, build, and advance as one people. Country above self, peace and justice. After God, the earth, the land, the people, the light. Under the shade, I flourish. A people of excellence, molded by nature, nurtured by God, liberty, equality, fraternity. Forward, upward, onward together. And then there's us, whither the fates carry us. In God we trust. We're dealing with a hegemonic power, ladies and gentlemen. We're dealing with a hegemonic power. You're going to hear so much about that. If you've been paying attention to mainstream media or social media especially, the hegemonic powers, and we're going to have some conversation about that. What I'm going to do right now, and I have two clips. This first one will set the tone. it's the interview that the ambassador did in Belize, and I'm using it somewhat of a preview to what we will do in the coming weeks when he's a guest on all fronts via webinar and Zoom. And like I said, you, the listening public, will have opportunity to be active participants in that Zoom. So what you'll know more about that, like I said, in the coming months. I'm just setting this up for our listening. And so it's about 30 minutes. So be patient. Listen up. Let's see. Here we go.
Well, we'll go quickly into this because you and I have been discussing it even before we get on mic. Let's go directly into CARICOM has had this long-standing defense of its sovereignty and its non-intervention policy. But how does the region interpret the implications of Mr. Trump, extraterritorial force to go into Venezuela, kidnap the president and his wife and take them to a completely different jurisdiction and charging them as they have been charged with narco trafficking? As ambassador to CARICOM, what is your overview of this type of action on the part of Mr. Trump?
Well, I think, generally speaking, the Trump presidency and the Trump policy and doctrine constitutes a fundamental challenge to CARICOM. In fact, a fundamental repudiation of CARICOM, of our Caribbean historical journey, our whole journey from enslavement, colonialism, to nationhood, to making a place for ourselves in this world order. And so clearly, if you look at what we stand for the multilateral system. We stand for international law because, we historically were the victims of the might makes right doctrine of colonial powers. We stand for a zone of peace. In fact, we have championed the idea of our region being a zone of peace because, again, our history was all about the denial of peace. We had to fight for peace, and our whole economy in this region is really based upon the maintenance of peace. Our Prime Minister Errol Barrow, way back in 1966, advanced the foreign policy doctrine, friends of all, satellites of none. We had to fight hard to decolonize. We had to fight hard for nationhood. And we have always made it clear that we are in nobody's camp. We are in nobody's backyard. We reserve the right to act as sovereign nations and to have relations with any nation, who we feel comfortable with. We are also very much committed to a multipolar world. We, as people who have come out of the oppression of the colonial empires, our natural commitment is not to a unipolar world dominated by any one big power, but to a multipolar world in which there are several different sources of power and influence. So that is who we are. And when we look at what Mr. Trump has come with, the Trump, if you look at the last year of the Trump presidency, it has been all about disrupting the multilateral system, disrupting the system of international law. Two days ago, they pulled out of 66 different multilateral institutions. Mm-hmm. It has been about projecting U.S. power. what we have seen unfold with Venezuela is really about projecting U.S. power. You know, some people say it's about the oil. Well, the oil is part of it, but the truth is the Venezuelans were always more than willing to collaborate with the U.S. on the utilization, the commercial development of their oil resources. In fact, they were begging the U.S. administration to give licenses to the U.S. Oil and gas companies to have commercial relations with them. So it is about projecting power. It is about this administration's refusal to accept a multipolar world. They are still fighting the battle that the world should be unipolar. It should be dominated by the superpower known as the United States of America. And they are fighting, they have resurrected the Monroe Doctrine, and they are aiming it principally at China. They feel that this hemisphere is their backyard. They must totally dominate it, and there must be no foreign competitor. And the foreign competitor that they're most concerned about really is China. So they're trying to impose that kind of dominance and control on our region. So we are faced now with a fundamental challenge. Do we stay true to ourselves? Do we stay true to our historical journey? Do we stay true to the struggles and sacrifices and aspirations of our ancestors? Or do we abandon all of that? And do we settle to be, basically vassal states with no real nationhood and sovereignty?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, we can't do that. So we have to find ways of resisting and being true to ourselves and our historical mission.
As you speak, Ambassador, I mean, I hear the overall world view, so to speak, that you're maintaining there, which is consistent with how CARICOM has addressed these issues. But clearly, we have never faced something to this proportion of an actual move on the part of the United States in recent years to do what it has done. Clearly, it is a might make right policy, and it goes against the grain of that unipolar scenario that you were talking about earlier. So it appears that the move of Mr. Trump, even before going into Venezuela and kidnapping Mr. Maduro and his wife, that in fact his movement within the region over the last 6 or 8 months has fractured that unity within CARICOM, with the Prime Minister of Trinidad taking the position that she has, which is contrary to what her colleagues within the region has had. And that fracture has in fact caused debate among CARICOM. So what is our position then? Is it to adapt to what Mr. Trump is now saying is the policy of this region, that this is an extension of Mr. Teddy Roosevelt's idea of you are in our backyard and therefore you must do what we say, and going along with that as Ms. Possard seems to be? Or do we maintain that position that this is a zone of peace and no, we will not tolerate your unilateral moves that you're making within the region? Your comment, sir.
Well, as I indicated, if we go along, we would be repudiating our history, we would be repudiating our ancestors, we would be repudiating all that is sacred about ourselves. So we can't. You are right. The Americans have managed to divide CARICOM, and that is extremely unfortunate, because the most effective way in which we will be able to resist is if we are unified. It will become very difficult to resist if you are divided. And we are are divided. I mean, we have had the remarkable spectacle of a CARICOM member state actually repudiating that CARICOM fundamental policy of our region being a zone of peace. So the facts are clear that that division has occurred. How can we heal that division? It's left to be seen. We have a heads of government conference coming up in St. Kitts next month. But there has to be resistance. And so if that resistance cannot be at the optimum level of total unity, then it has to be the resistance of, let's say, a majority of the CARICOM member states. But I don't see how we could give in to it, because if we give in to this Trump doctrine of dominance, and embedded in that Trump philosophy is an institutionalized disdain for black and brown nations and people. I mean, shithole countries,
that's what
as they have been referred to. So if we accommodate that, what are we doing to our psyches? What message are we sending to our children? We, on the other hand, we have always been committed to the dignity of black and brown people. That is why we have engaged on a reparations campaign, for example. That is why we always oppose anti-black racism and stand for the dignity and rights of black people. So, to my way of thinking, Nuri, giving in to that agenda is a non-starter. So let's put that aside. So then the question becomes, how can we best resist? And that is where we need to put our heads together. As I said, the ideal scenario is that we are totally unified in developing that campaign of resistance. But if that is not possible, then hopefully a majority of us will come together and will find a way to resist. And there are ways of resisting. There are ways of resisting. There's several strategies we can utilize. We have to defend the notion of multilateralism. We are members of several multilateral organizations, from the UN to the OAS to the Commonwealth to CELAC. We are developing our relationship with the African Union. So these are all spaces within which we could craft response and resistance strategies. We know that we have to diversify our economic linkages. We know that we can't continue to be so dependent on exports coming from the United States. We have to develop South-South linkages. So that we have to find ways to resist. So I think that is the immediate agenda for us right now.
One of the things that's interesting about this entire scenario is that on the ground, many of our people, and I'm talking here in Belize, seem to side with the Americans, and for whatever reason, find justifications to suggest that, in fact, the moves of Mr. Trump is justified, and that the echo of those like yourself, and I would include me, that is pushing back on this policy of Mr. Trump are in fact out of sync with the real world realities and are being sidelined as radicals opposed to a more intelligent move that Mr. Trump is trying to implicate. And one of the things that is brought out is that, in fact, Mr. Trump is trying to echo in a new world order that is kind of beneficial to us. We shouldn't be in that old radical ways of the 60s and the 70s. That is floating out. What we need to do now, and that's kind of echoed by Ms. Possad, is that this is a new world. And we need to wake up, smell the coffee, and get with this new program. So are you seeing that in Barbados as we are seeing it in other parts of the Caribbean? We need to get with the program, and the program is now Mr. Trump.
Permit me to address that.
Certainly.
If Mr. Trump is successful in his agenda, it will likely mean perhaps the end of humanity, Nuri. If Mr. Trump is successful in dismantling the multilateral system, in dismantling the system of international law, if he is successful in subverting the whole climate change agenda, he has already pulled the USA out of the Paris Agreement. He has already signaled that he does not believe in global warming, that they are going to drill, baby, drill. So the scientists have all told us that the world is moving to a fatal level of global warming that will have dire consequences for all mankind. In addition, we know that the amount of nuclear weapons that exist in the world today, if there is a nuclear conflict, that the likelihood of humanity surviving is very minimal. So if you go about dismantling the multilateral system, Mr. Trump has said that the US is going to restart testing nuclear weapons. These are some of the existential dangers. This policy of dismantling the multilateral system, getting rid of multilateral institutions. Nuri, we just had a major hurricane, Hurricane Melissa, that hit Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba. You know what were the institutions that immediately sprung into action? The United Nations institutions, the World Food Program. The World Food Program has just partnered with Barbados. We have established a major logistics hub right here in Barbados. As soon as Melissa hit Jamaica, the planes and ships were leaving Barbados full of humanitarian supplies for Jamaica. In other words, so much of the safety and security of this world is guaranteed by multilateral institutions, by the United Nations institutions, not just people like to dismiss the UN because the Security Council is dysfunctional, etc. Yes, so we know the Security Council is dysfunctional because these 5 permanent member states have veto power. But there's so many other United Nations institutions that play extremely critical roles, in keeping keeping humanity in a good place. So I am saying to you that, first of all, Black people of the Caribbean who think the way you are suggesting, something would have to be wrong with their sense of racial pride and dignity to be going along with an agenda that is so dismissive. It's so dismissive of the dignity of our people, of our nations, of our whole aspiration to nationhood. That's number one. But I'm going even further. I'm saying, if you go along with that agenda, you are being an accomplice on the road to perhaps the destruction of the only planet that we possess. So in fact, we, small countries and peoples, societies like the Caribbean, we have to try to be the adult in the room. We have to try to say to these big powers, this is nonsense. This idea that only one power can rule the world, that is nonsense. That is going to take humanity to destruction. We have serious existential problems to face, and we should be facing them together. There's no reason for any Cold War between the US and China. In fact, they should be cooperating. They should be cooperating to solve the real problems of mankind. So that we have to be always willing to speak truth to power. We have to be the adults in the room, as Arabaro said, friends of all, satellites of none. We are the ones who have to keep pointing at the supreme, overarching best interests of humanity and be challenging them, be challenging them to live up to those kinds of objectives rather than going along with them. We have to have more wisdom. We have to have more wisdom than these so-called big powers who seem to be intent on very negative and destructive competition.
It appears, Ambassador, and this is my last point to you, and thank you very much for being with us this morning at such a last-minute call to you last night. Thank you again. But in closing, there is an interesting dilemma here. Here we have Venezuela, and if I could go back to Cuba, that in this multilateral relationship that you highlighted just now, assisted the Caribbean, smaller states like ourselves and Barbados, in extending to them the Petro-Carib. They extended housing, medical. In the case of Cuba, medical brigades went into several of our countries, assisting in agriculture, assisting in housing, assisting in many, many areas that was our mainstay, especially during the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Yet when Venezuela is being directly attacked and indirectly Cuba is being targeted, in fact, many of those oil tankers that left Venezuela, some of them were on their way to Cuba, because we know that the Cuban oil is very important to the stability of the economy of Cuba. So Cuba is indirectly in the crosshairs of Mr. Trump. Yet there seems to be a silence.
They assassinated 32 Cubans.
In that attack. Yes, it was Cubans that lost their lives. Indeed. So I'm pointing that out to ask this question. It appears that we were punked out and afraid to come to the aid of Venezuela, who has helped us, helped our economy. And we seem to also be reluctant to come out and speak truth to power when it comes to dealing with Cuba, because clearly we could be looking at the idea of regime change in Cuba likewise. So what are we as Caribbean states going to do in the face of this type of aggressive move on friends? Cuba was our friend. Venezuela was our friend. Yet we seem reluctant. Even the statement, and I must say this, congratulations to your Prime Minister, who spoke very strongly to her country. And then later on we saw a statement coming from CARICOM, which I'm sorry, as the ambassador there in CARICOM, it was a very lukewarm, watered down kind of statement. And I would have thought that it would have had a little bit more strength in the language that was used in that comment. Please address that for us.
First of all, let me make the point. I am a Barbados ambassador. I am not I am Barbados's ambassador to CARICOM. So the government and country I represent is the Republic of Barbados. So let's be very clear about that.
Okay.
But I totally agree with you. It is shameful, Nuri. Venezuela and Cuba are two of our dearest friends who have demonstrated that friendship over a long period of time. And to me, it is shameful that when these countries come under this kind of illegal attack, that our Caribbean community has not, spoken up in the way that we should have spoken up. It is very distressing. It is very distressing to me. So I am with you. I'm with you on that. What was your final question?
Yeah, basically, that was the frame, Ambassador. That in fact, a friend in need is a friend indeed. When we needed a friend, Cuba came to our aid. I can tell you here in Belize, their medical brigades and the other help that Cuba extended to Belize was fundamental. 20 years ago, we could see that. So I'm really pointing that there seem to be, we have use a street term, we punk out, man. We punk out instead of coming to the aid of our friends.
We are missing the plot because, look, the United States of America, all of us in this hemisphere, we were all simply European colonies, all of us, right? 13 of those British colonies in North America went on to form this United States of America and to win their independence in 1783. They were a very small country, 366,000 square miles, 2.5 million people. The colonies north of them went on, the British colonies, to form the Confederation of Canada. And they formed these nation states. We are trying to do likewise. We similarly, we have our Caribbean civilization to build. Our agenda is to integrate, to come together as a Caribbean region. And of course, Cuba and Venezuela are important entities of that Caribbean civilization. So why should we be content? We sit back, we see how these European colonies came together in North America to establish this United States, this nation. They came together to establish this Confederation of Canada. And we see how they have gone on to build strength for themselves and to become these very powerful entities. So why don't we have a similar ambition for ourselves? That must be our ambition. The same way that was their ambition, and they went ahead and did it. Our ambition must be to build a strong, resourceful Caribbean civilization. We may not become one nation like the USA and Canada, but certainly we must integrate. We must come together, and Venezuela and Cuba have demonstrated in many practical ways their commitment to that process. So that is the bigger picture we need to keep in mind, and we do not need to apologize about that. You did it. US said that is what you did. You were just a set of British colonies like us. But you had the good sense to come together and form your integrated structure. We must do the same thing too, So I would hope that we could, our leaders could see, get in contact with what is our historical mission, what is the mission our history has bequeathed to us, what is the mission the sufferings of our ancestors have bequeathed to us, and recognize that we cannot betray it. We cannot betray it. And that there are always ways to resist. Our ancestors resisted under worse conditions, much worse conditions than us. They were enslaved. They had nothing. They had no weapons, nothing. They were stripped of their liberty, yet they found multiple ways to resist. How could we now let down that tradition and simply capitulate? No, Yuri. And finally, we would be doing a tremendous disservice to our children, to our young people, if we give if now at this late stage in the year 2026, we now make this reversal and send the message to our children and our grandchildren: look, we are set up second-rate, hapless people with no sovereignty, no integrity. I don't want that for my grandchildren.
Yeah.
And I reject that must be our future. So if that can't be our future, let us fight for something more acceptable.
I agree with you, Ambassador David. And we appreciate your coming at such short notice, and really your points today were very well taken. And we'll watch and see. Clearly this is an agenda being unfolded, and it's not over. And I love the idea of the United States of the Caribbean. That sounds nice to me. So we've heard about the United States of America, but the United States of the Caribbean is a vision that can be realized. It's a work in progress. Thank you very much, my brother. I appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you if you come back to Belize, or if we get a chance to come and see you in Barbados. All the best.
I have to come to Belize because we have to work. Now that we have this full free movement regime, Barbados, Belize, St. Vincent and Dominica, we have to fully develop the relationship between the four of us.
Indeed.
There you have it. You know, Jonathan Starlin did an excellent article, actually. I enjoyed the article that he did in the World Gazette yesterday, I think. Divided we fall, united we must stand. And it is somewhat of I consider it more of a constructive critique of the CARICOM nations not making a statement on the whole U.S. attack on Venezuela. But it's an interesting concept that he speaks to in terms of the decision not to say anything, anticipatory obedience. And I find that concept very interesting. Anticipatory obedience. And in listening to the conversation with the ambassador just now, he didn't explicitly speak to it, but he definitely spoke to there must be some form of resistance. And if there's some form of resistance, certainly you can't have anticipatory obedience, which implies a certain conformity to the decisions of the powers that be. And so, yeah, I want to hear from those of you out there. And hey, you know, I'll let Jonathan know that we're also integrating his article in the context of what tonight's show is about. Because interestingly, also, that speaks to this, and I'm going to get to you in a moment, callers, but I want to just share this here because the U.S. just released some 75 countries that they have, conducted or imposed U.S. freezes in terms of visas for processing. Some 75 countries, including Jamaica, out of many one. And so when you look at those 75 countries that the U.S. has now imposed a freeze on, and this is something to think about, because when you listen to the types of, the interview just now and where and what resistance is needed, at some point, the people are going to have to, we the people taking that U.S. quote, we the people, that mantra, are going to have to stand up and take action. And the American people are, as we bear witness to right now, are taking some action. But of the 75 countries whose visas are now frozen by the U.S. in terms of processing, 15 of those countries are expected to be in the World Cup. Now, I'm just going to put this out there. I find it interesting when we hear what we just heard in terms of the types of resistance, that we haven't heard any attempt of economic sanction or economic boycott of the United States. And let me just say, a boycott of the World Cup is an economic boycott. All right, that's what that is. That's what that will be. Because you're talking not millions, well, billions of dollars that will be circulated during the World Cup. So I find it interesting. So I'm going to start off and engage you, the listening audience. I want to get your perspective in terms of what you've just heard. Where's Bermuda in this here? Where are the faith leaders? Good night, you on all fronts.
Brother Lou, how you doing?
Hey, Brother Glenn, I'm doing well.
Glenn, brother, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, sir.
Hey. Yes. I appreciated that that interview.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but it spoke to, and like you, I read Jonathan Starlin's piece today.
All right.
I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, it is.
Even as though he put it into context. He writes that around. He's a great writer. And it's, timely.
Oh, it's very timely, very timely. I found it timely. I guess we were somewhat, how can I say, intellectually in sync without knowing it.
Yeah.
Because I had this.
That happened.
Yeah.
That happened.
And I'm addressing issues of foreign affairs for this month, because as someone like yourself who is engaged in matters of social justice and foreign affairs, I find it interesting, Glenn, that, and I understand it from the context of us as a colony, because we deal more with our internal and local affairs, and the foreign affairs is left to the UK.
Right. Well, I mean, that's true, and it's not true. As you know, that throughout my own history, has been involved in both. Because you can't really, remember, you can't really deal with one without the other.
Exactly.
It's all connected. And as time goes on, we see that we're that much more connected. And I think that's why we're seeing this madness go on at this time. That it may be that we were getting, quote unquote, too connected in positive ways, that somebody's trying to pull up the brakes. But I just on the point, there was a couple of points I want to raise. One was the query about popularity. The interviewer didn't cite specifics. He was saying that there are people who are saying that they're in favor of Trump. I don't know whether or not there is any evidence in there. I mean, there must be some polling that reflects something. But I would go further to say that at times, when you just sort of even take a poll, somebody, what a part of it is that you expect everybody to see the light one time. But that's not true in history. I can think of, we're doing this thing on Monday highlighting Martin Luther King Day.
Right.
That's Martin Luther King Day, and we're doing something at St. Paul's AME lunchtime, 12 to 1. But do you know that when Martin Luther King got assassinated, looking back, we think that Martin Luther King was the most popular person at that time since sliced bread. But he wasn't. You go online and you'll see things about popularity during the time of King's assassination. I read it right up on my screen here. They're pointing out the Smithsonian magazine They're saying 75% of Americans who had unfavorable feelings about Martin Luther King. That is the person that they almost worship now. Why? Because then he had taken some strong stands. In that last couple of years of his life, he had evolved into somebody who was identifying the implications of things like militarism. So it sounds familiar today. So he was ahead of his time in some ways, but he was addressing the Vietnam War craziness that was going on at the time. And people like the mainstream media, they in fact, when he made a speech April 4th, 1967, at Riverside Church, and the tenor of this speech was about what we are, where are we at this time? And he took on the issue of the Vietnam War and how that was an imperial war, this devastating war. I mean, they dropped tons of bombs in their place. And there was a growing movement at the time, but he had sort of held his tongue for a little while. But April 4th, 1967, he came out with this long piece calling for a revolution of values in the state. And he specifically criticized the president, LBJ. And even though LBJ was the person he worked closely with on things like the Civil Rights Act, but he recognized that you can do two things at once, but you must be guided by principle. As simple as that. And in doing so 75% of Americans, and I was listening to Cornel West the other day on it, and he pointed out, he was speaking to this, that's why I looked it up, and he was saying if you even looked at the black population, he was only 50-50 with the black population. So in other words, a lot of black people had this unfavorable view. Why? Because people at times are influenced by the dominant culture. So
listening to that and juxtaposing, and let me ask you this, listening to what you're saying and juxtaposing what's coming up in terms of the global conversation and local connection on Martin Luther King Day, that's Monday at St. Paul's, right?
Yeah.
Monday the 19th. When I listen to you share that, I mean, this is something that's being discussed right now in the context of, of course, the imperialism of that era, of that day. The same argument was being made by especially revolutionaries of the 60s and 70s and certainly Martin Luther King. But when we reflect upon it and look at it right now with what the hegemonic powers, and these are the terms that people are using, you know, when we're saying hegemony, we're talking about authoritarianism, imperialism. There are always those people, and I think that's what was coming out in the interview with the brother. He was saying, in Belize, actually, he's saying there are people who agree with what Trump did. And it's the same thing you're saying in terms of the unfavorability that persons had toward even a Martin Luther King, right, during that era, because of that stance, that one stance he took against the United States and Vietnam.
Right. So you used the term one stance. It was. In other words, he
had many stances, but I know it is the Vietnam stance that escalated, or as many would say in history, you know, to his demise and death when he started speaking out about Vietnam.
So I just want to clear that one little point out. Say that his stance about Vietnam linked to his stance that he began to fully understand what the nature of the imperialism was, and it's, you remember, and it was Dwight Eisenhower who blew the whistle on the military-industrial complex. In other words, they make a lot of money of all this warring. That's what you heard about how the stocks went way up when Trump went in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And remember, stocks went up in Gaza. People made a lot of money of it. So there's this link between the money and the brutality. And the brutality, the outcome of the brutality is to say, he said, well, look, I want that oil. Mm-hmm. But the oil is not the end. It just goes further than that. But all to say that, as he makes the point, the brother from Barbados, Commission,
yeah,
he makes the point about the interconnections that we had. And actually, interviewer brought it up too, is that when do you stand by those who stood by you? Mm-hmm. But I'm reminded here, I got this quote here, and it comes from a German Lutheran pastor. He was imprisoned in Nazi Germany, and it addresses this. It says, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I'm not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I'm not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I'm not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. You see what I'm saying? So in other words, that, well, because we're all connected, if we don't move, if we don't take a stand, and it's a variety of ways of taking that stand.
And I think the ambassador...
Then it empowers the negative energy.
Right.
It empowers the authoritarian, the boot on your neck. So that's what we're called for, is that, and reflection is the important thing, and that's why we're having, that event there. Let me just suggest that people check out, what's her name? Bernice King has an invitation to the world about Martin Luther King Day. Go online. I'll send you a link.
Okay, yeah.
But
send it to me.
She actually covers all of it. She covers that whole thing. We need a holistic approach to these circumstances, and this is some unprecedented times. But you'll also see that our background slogan is about always learning.
Yeah,
and that's what people like King demonstrated that. So we have to use this as a learning opportunity, and I mean learning at that, and that
and learning implying also implying that the learning is about action. It's about taking action toward.
Well, if you're not learning, then you're not going to take action.
Yeah.
But if the action that you take is based on that learning, you see what I'm saying? They go together again. But no, I've got our family is blessed with 4 grandsons, and the oldest is just 11, the youngest is 3, and that's the generation, and not just my relatives or whatever, but that generation, man, I feel a little concerned, a lot concerned about what kind of world they're going to inherit.
Well, this seems to be the sentiments that many are expressing, whether you're in education, especially those of social, political, education consciousness, cultural consciousness. We say, what world are we leaving for our children? But this is all of this is adult actions, and what we see before us, and it is a thing, or we are in contestation with this might versus right mentality.
There you go.
Right, and it's going to be a testament to the will of the people, and that gets to what you're talking about in terms of recognizing their collective strength to contest the might versus right, and the role, and not so much that we put our children on the front line, but our children to some degree are on the front line. When you look at what's going on globally in terms of who are the casualties of war, namely women and children. Right?
You look at Gaza, and it's still going on. Exactly.
Exactly.
The human rights. humanitarian organization?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate you giving that insight, it's a good, it's a good connection in terms of, and it's always so timely. Martin Luther King Day, synonymous with the global of events of violence. So we make the plea for nonviolence, or at least for peace. Yeah. Appreciate you, brother.
All right.
Yeah, man.
Okay, man. You keep up the good work.
Thank you. Good night. You're on all fronts.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And good to talk to you in this new year.
It's always a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Bless.
Couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
If you're not free, what are you?
We're in captivity.
Exactly.
Well, I'm in a colony, so we enjoy the benefits of the movement that the colony provides us, but we understand the measure of captivity that a colony brings to our. Let me just put it in the context of our own existential realities. I mean, you know what your movements are and what your movements can't be. And even with that question, I'm glad you bring, because when you think in terms of this issue that we're talking about and our so-called freedom, or are we free? Here it is, the U.S. puts a freeze on visas and you can't travel to the U.S. because of your country. But yet, this is a country, or that is a country, well, not right now, but they're at war with each other around authoritarianism and democracy. But we were fed over our lifetime this whole thing about democracy and democratic actions and freedom. So you're right. That's what's in question. If you're not free, what are you?
It's a very important question.
It is.
Especially if you're in a world that's designed to enslave you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not free in a world that's designed to enslave you, then you are a slave in that system. No matter what type of work you do, no matter how refined it is, no matter what type of job you have.
And let me just have this conversation. It's not an exaggeration. I'm glad, when people hear this right now, they say, oh, slavery. But right now, the times that we are in, and when you look at taking your question of being free, the imposition of our own movements, whether directly or indirectly, and directly meaning, of course, if visas are frozen in certain countries versus your movement, because I'm not going to the United States, or I'm not going to this country because the increased violence. And people are actually being told not to go to the United States right now because of the violence there. Or if it's not there, it's somewhere else. People are leaving, and given that we talk about England, this is the movement, the free movement piece that you bring up. We talk about our people who find difficulty of movement here on the colony because of cost of living, and have gone to England, emigrated to England. They get to England. Now, England is looking at, or let's say Britain, they're looking at the exodus of many of their young because they can't move the way they would like to move. So your question, if you're not free, what are you? And it is an important reflection on that, because right now there is, whether you want to or not, there is some measure, some handcuff on us in terms of movement. So you're right. if you're not free, what are you? And there isn't a measure of enslavement to it.
Well, I'm not sure I would understand when you say some measure. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant.
Well, there is enslavement to it, not measure.
But exactly.
Yeah.
You know, the enslavement, I mean...
There's a psychological slavery that comes with it, too. I mean, like I said, some may not feel that there's, you know, when we talk about the historic context that we associate with enslavement, but there's lots of psychological slavery. There's also physical slavery still going on globally. So we may not feel that in the same way that some people are captured and enslaved. But there's the psychological slavery.
Certainly. We've become very sophisticated in using terminology to explain our enslavement.
Yeah.
You know, our victimization. Certain words we don't like to hear, and certain understandings we don't want to deal with. Like when the brother was talking about the Prime Minister of Trinidad and our stand. Sometimes we underestimate the fear that people have in confronting this problem.
Right.
You know, because it provokes an anxiety in people to the extent where it's easier to comply with your own enslavement and hope that things are going to be okay because you complied.
You're onto something there, because even in Starling's article in the papers, the term that he uses, anticipatory obedience,
right,
which implies a willing, a willing conformity to
that's the sophistication of the word.
Yeah. In other words, you're going to, you willingly or you preemptively conform out of fear.
Right. You know, and but not really addressing the problem face on because of this fear. You know, so and part of the fear leads us to even deny the fact that it's actually happening. In the sense that, which is worse than compliant. You're aware it's happening, but don't comply anyway.
Yeah.
But imagine not even confronting or countering this injustice because you're not aware of it. That's even worse. And in that sense, when the brother was talking about mentality or the youth needs to have this information because it's vital for their development.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a 10-year-old black kid, you're not going to always be 10 years old. You're going to grow into an older black person still facing the same enslavement because you're not free.
Let me ask you this here, because you're raising something, and this is for other listening audience out there, recognizing in the interview, the ambassador spoke to, the importance of what this means for all of us, but most importantly for our children and our grandchildren. Yeah.
Yes.
Is this something we should be having conversation with our children right now? Or
absolutely. The children need to understand the question, either you're free or you're not free. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant.
And free in this context, when we look at what's happening globally, locally, because there are connections. There are people who have accused even the leadership here of being authoritarian at times. Be that what it is, that's all on a local level. But when we look at the implications of what's happening on the grander scheme of the global level, and Bermuda's foreign affairs, should we be having these type of conversations with our children about what are the consequences? What does it mean in terms of, as you say, as you put out there, in terms of your ability to move and to be free, or just people making the decision, I'm going to get up and I'm going to migrate someplace else, which is also a part of your free movement.
Free movement doesn't make you free. Slaves were transferred one place to another. So that if you're not free in one place, you're not free in any place, anywhere in the world.
Right.
It's just a question or the degree of oppression that you'll have to abide by, because you don't have the power to change globally anything. If we don't understand how this unjust system works, everything that we do understand will confuse us, and we'll think that we'll be able to solve problems without understanding the problem, what as it actually is in reality. That's the mental illness that we suffer from, because we don't understand really what we're up against. So we want to talk about curbing things or making things fair. You can't get fair or make things less deadly when the terminal illness is there. The cancer is there. You can't put a Band-Aid over cancer and hope the problem is going to be solved. You have to understand that it's an actual cancer. And if we don't understand and comprehend what Trump is doing, represents a system of domination since George Washington's time.
Right.
Nothing's changed. It's like when Harry Tubman, I said last night, when Harry Tubman said, you know, she saved 1,000 slaves, she could have saved 1,000 more if they knew that they were slaves. Imagine, I'm not going to be for my freedom, and I'm going to stay on the plantation because they don't understand that they are slaves. Or they think that this person is supplying all the needs that they need in order to be what? Battle slaves?
Yeah.
My chains are shinier than yours?
Yeah.
But you're still a slave?
Yeah.
So money is used to entice people and to realize that you can buy people certain ways, entice people certain ways with this tool, which only they print money in the world. What is the dollar backed by? Is it backed by by gold today? Who makes that decision? If I print all the money that everybody is forced to use, you must be enslaved to that.
Well, you know,
if you don't understand that, then you got a problem.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I have another clip that again focuses on United States decisions right now and the implications for Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean. And it captures some of the things that you just spoke of in terms of really, and when you're talking about movement, who controls you? What is it you're going to, what battle you're going to choose to fight in order to sustain your comfort level, you know? Or are you going to fight that battle knowing that it's going to be totally disruptive to your comfort level, but at the price of it, what you get is your freedom and your, at least, principles of integrity and honor?
Yes. Lack of self-knowledge, lack of self-knowledge.
Yeah.
And lack of real self-respect. Is what the brother was saying. We are doing unless we confront this injustice, which we were born into.
Yeah.
It didn't happen since we've been here. We were born into it. Our parents were born into it.
Yeah.
And
Our parents have been brought into it. We are reliving it, and it gets back to the concerns and the fears that the ambassador was speaking to, that we need not reproduce this to subject our children to it.
Exactly.
And we've already finished the first 25 years of the 21st century. You're right.
Right.
So their next 75 years, if they have that, if there isn't any actions on the threats of annihilation. But I want to play this clip.
What do you mean by no threats or before you play the clip?
Well, again, the threats are already there, coming from. When we talk about the authoritarian, when we talk about United States, the threats are already there in terms of what they will do to those countries. We'll go in and bomb. We'll go in and use such force to take what we want. That threat in itself imposes if you're using any military might. And even in the interview, when the ambassador was speaking and saying, when we look at it, well, we know most of in terms of who has nuclear weapons today. I mean, there are so many. You and I grew up through the 70s and 80s, and it was mainly, the threat between the Cold War of United States and the Soviet Union. Now not everyone, but certainly major powers, China, India, through Europe, all have access to a nuclear weapon. Pakistan, right? And we understand why they don't want an Iran to have one, or anyone else in the Middle East other than Israel. So these are the threats, and these are the real threats that our children faced based upon the adult leadership. But I appreciate you, Omar, putting that in there. I want to share this clip because it captures some of what you're talking about. These are leaders. These are leaders of our so-called free world, right? Who themselves are restricted because the might is right in the United States. And if you don't comply, then hey, you suffer the consequence. Let's see. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, bro. Yeah. I'll talk to you next week.
Yes, sir.
Can't have both. Is the Caribbean caught in the middle of a new Cold War? Donald Trump has reportedly sent a clear warning to Caribbean leaders. Either stand with America or risk losing U.S. support by deepening ties with China. As tensions between Washington and Beijing escalate, the Caribbean has become a key battleground for influence. With billions of dollars in Chinese investments pouring into the region and the U.S. looking to reassert control, Trump's message is loud and clear. Choose wisely. This isn't just a political showdown. It's about economic survival, national security, and the future of the Caribbean. With China building ports, highways, and energy projects in several nations, the U.S. sees a direct threat to its dominance in the Western Hemisphere. Trump, known for his America First policies, is now pressuring leaders in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and the wider Caribbean to rethink their partnerships. The big question is, will the Caribbean comply or resist?
And that was much of the interview with Ambassador Commission. Will they comply or will they resist? And coming from the ambassador, he says we have to find ways to resist, if not submit to the will of what the United States is implying. CARICOM and the rest of the world. Bermuda too. Good night, you and all friends. Good night.
Yeah, so gonna know what's happening.
Hey, what's about my brother?
Well, I see you people are on the wrong side of this issue, for sure.
Well, it sounds like everybody's on the wrong side of this issue.
Well, Donald Trump says that every country must spend 13% of their revenue on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they're a weak country. So what are we spending on our defense?
Well, and when we say defense, what type of defense? When you say that, what type of defense should we be spending it on?
Army, Marines, and the Navy.
Okay.
If you want to be independent, you're going to need 4 ships on every cargo point. Otherwise, you'll be invaded.
Mm-hmm.
Can you stop invasion? No,
Well,
you can't. You know, I mean, the whole of the Caribbean, the people of the Caribbean, what they need to do is rise up and get rid of the leaders and let the Caribbean be a part of the United States, just like in Nostrand Avenue and Atlantic. When you go to Nostrand Avenue and Atlantic, all you see is every Caribbean island has a store.
Mm-hmm.
And people have their green cards and they go to America. And one time I was on the J train, and this woman says, "Oh, y'all Barbadian. I'm from St. Lucia. When I was working in your country, you kicked us out."
Mm-hmm.
The Barbadian said, "Well, we're all in America now." Because the Caribbean islands are stupid. They do not understand that socialism only works with immigration. And your population is too small to increase your GDP. This is macroeconomics, sir. So, I mean, these islands down there, the leaders stay in power for 10, 30 years.
Let me ask you this here. Is the population too small? If there, for example, with what you're saying, if there's a United States of the Caribbean, then you're talking, what, Jamaica's, what, how many million? Jamaica's a...
All right, hold up. Let's say this another way. Americans, black Americans, have a $9 trillion economy.
Mm-hmm.
So our relationship with them is more
I thought it was up to 11, but go ahead.
What's going on in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
You know, and then culturally, our relationship with black Americans is what takes us forward.
All right.
You know, it's more important. The people in the Caribbean are just people who stay there, they're left behind, or people who are connected to the government who makes money through this Westminster system, which is corrupt. You know, because the civil servants get all the jobs, they just bankroll a business that don't make money, and then the government stay in power so long, and then the same person who is in the parliament is the premier. So he gets 2 paychecks, so he's stealing away from anybody else who would be the president like they have in the United States. You don't have separation of power. I mean, it's total garbage. You know, that's why they had to get rid of Bishop and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I even need the people in the Caribbean, sort of about Trump needs to put up a shut up. Invade these countries.
Invade them?
Invade Bermuda. I'll take it. I'd rather be a part of the United States than part of this. You could be like Puerto Rico. I don't have a problem with a U.S. invasion at all.
That's interesting in the context.
I went to North Carolina with big black boots and carried the GPMB live ammunition and it did target me. That's what Saddam is saying. Everybody's talking about they're going to fight, and his soldiers turned to me and got a green card. Now the guy who turned to me and is a part of the United States.
You mean Maduro?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about Saddam Hussein. It's not like Maduro. All the people are happy.
Well. Everybody knows that the coup d'état, the imperialistic playbook is by the United States. It's the same script. I mean, and I can tell you that even right now, there's a lot of questions in terms of the so-called kidnapping of Maduro.
Well, my whole thing is you can call it liberalism. You know what I call it? American democracy.
Well, that's confused thinking to me. That's not democracy.
No, it's not bringing that to the rest of the world wants to be like America. You know, when we want to show people that's the American standard, it's the international standard of the world. Why we don't have casinos? Why we don't have McDonald's? why we can't sell our pension for lump sum.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're backward island. You know, we're slow. You know, that's because, you know, this Caribbean slow mentality. There's too much people from the Caribbean in Bermuda looking for a pass. Because you're black, you get a pass. But Buckwater said, all foreigners are white, so we go independent.
All right.
The enemy.
Well, let's see what response is out there for your position.
Two sides to every story, man. You guys you're going on the wrong path right now. You end up like, what's that guy name in Africa?
Who? Ibrahim Traore?
No, Lumumba. You remember what happened to him?
Yeah.
Patrice Lumumba. The army will probably, tie people up right now.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful. Have a good night.
All right, my brother. I came across this clip. Well, hold on. Good night, you're on all fronts.
Good evening, Dr. Lou.
Good evening, sir.
How you doing?
Very well, thank you.
I got a couple of points I'd like to just
go ahead, share your points.
Put together.
Mm-hmm.
Almighty God tells us we must be careful of hypocrisy and hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on that tape you played, the first one, they were talking about the deep division that's caused as a result of what Trinidad had done.
Yeah.
Now, let me just go back a bit on a few things, and you can see the ties to what Trinidad had done.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to when the OBA wanted to have halfway to status,
right?
The West Indian community agreed with it.
Yeah.
And the word was that went to the West Indian community and asked them about it. They remained silent. They wouldn't say anything.
Like sounds like the CARICOM situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Or so according to Jonathan Starling's article. Go ahead.
So after that happened, when it moved forward,
mm-hmm.
they had these meetings on at Elliott School on pathways to status. I went to all those meetings, and the West Indian community, a lot of the people that were there, same color as you and I.
We've got Sherry,
and they carried on
Vera,
really
Marianne, and what's up, Judith? The swimmers, the door swimmers,
people,
the Daniel Head swimmers, the pool pals, the Saturday Dolphins, the mermaids, mermaids, and all the solo swimmers out there in Bermuda. You ready to take your time? 1, 2, 3, we're going on.
If you are a new rider to Bermuda's roads, come learn more about you and your bike in a safe and controlled. And teen sensation Gordon Smith on the Kawasaki Ninja 400 cubic centimeters.
Never allow that in their country. Now, let me just jump ahead.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, with the freedom of movement, that some of the CARICOM nations have agreed to, because all of them have not.
And now more about the party cruise coming to Bermuda June 20th,
That's my next point.
2026.
When they first heard about it,
so listen,
Bonnie, reparations.
All the options look amazing.
And all of a sudden, all I hear is, number states, everybody would have the right to be able to go into each other's countries and live and work.
Well, reparations was always a part of the CARICOM argument.
And it still is.
Yeah,
but
it's always.
I haven't heard too much about it recently. All I hear is people having a right to...
You would hear about it depending if... they're just... Let me just say, it's ongoing. That battle is still... They're still fighting that battle.
Yes.
Yeah, so because you don't hear about it doesn't mean it's not happening. So there's a lot that's happening with it, I can tell you.
But here's my concern is that Bermuda is very small. We do not have the space. When you're going to work mornings and you're traveling on the road, you're driving your car, you're driving at between 10 and 30 kilometers because it's a tremendous amount of traffic. Now you've got 350 families waiting for homes. You've got homeless people. You've got all of these problems here. And my concern is that if you become a member of CARICOM, you obviously you're definitely going to get some people saying, well, we, as a member, you have agreed to letting people come and live and work in your country. It's part of the agreement of this. And I don't agree with that.
Well, I do know, I know that's out there. The government of Bermuda still has a responsibility to bring, to give some clarity to their position. My understanding is that Bermuda has somewhat of a different position, because I think even Bahamas has a different position in terms of the freedom of movement that they don't agree to.
Yes, the Premier made a statement.
Yeah.
The Premier of Bermuda made a statement that they'd like to be part of CARICOM, but as far as people coming to live and work, but my point is this again, what if they insist that as a member, you have to let these people live and work in your country? That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, to insist is to reproduce almost something that we see going on with the United States and Venezuela, with the United States and the Caribbean. Right now, the United States has made it very clear to the Caribbean or members of CARICOM, comply or else.
Understand this.
So you're making somewhat of a similar statement.
Yeah.
That we either comply with what CARICOM requests of us in terms of moving the people, or forfeit our membership, our full membership.
Right. But
I don't think that's the case. But I hear what your argument is.
But understand this last point.
Mm-hmm.
Since 1963, when the PLP had come into being, and they started the first political party on this island.
Yeah.
I remember that day. And since that time, this government or subsequent government have never educated the people in this country fully on on independence, what we should be doing, what to expect, etc., etc. They haven't done that. So
I feel when we look at the current events right now, the current global events right now, and so-called, independence. One, we're not going to get any independence of what we perceive it to be in the prior nations. When you look at Jamaica's independence, I think that era of independence is I think, dead.
And the reason why
there's a different script that's being written, and we're looking at the independence of all of these countries right now in CARICOM. Their independence is under assault and threat. Their sovereignty is under assault and threat, right? So we who do not have independence are, whither the fate leads us, are sitting back observing and watching this here, contemplating what move we want to make. And what move we want to make is dictated by us, dictated by the UK. So,
right, but it's an indication of Bermuda moving forward. We haven't moved forward since 1963. What's up? And everything that we need to do, or we need to move forward, is hindered by mainly the older group. And that's why we've lost so many young people that have left the island. And
I get that, and I get that, I get that. But again, I'm gonna say again, in this climate that we're in, and I get that young people are leaving the island. But I don't care where we're going right now in the western side of things. None of us will escape the same fate that can befall us based upon the geopolitics that we're observing, experiencing, subjected to right now. We are in this. We are in this whether we want to be or not. That's what this is.
I agree with you, but we're not making no progress on this island, even internal. It's a lot of things that need to be done where we should be moving forward, and we're not.
Well, from the political level that we're not moving forward based upon your argument. We're not moving forward based upon the movement toward independence, as stated in 1963.
Not just that, but overall, in the operation of this whole island,
we get that housing, cost of living, all of that.
Yes,
let me take the next caller. Got you.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. Good night, you on all fronts. Good night.
Hi, good night, Lou.
Yes, sir.
It's the other commission.
Hey.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the brother who I like a lot, he was on about a couple minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
There is no insistence on the part of CARICOM's rules, its constitution, its bylaws, etc., that mandates the free movement of people.
Right.
CARICOM citizens, the individual citizens of CARICOM members throughout the various countries, nations that make up CARICOM.
Mm-hmm.
There is no insistence on full movement of people who are citizens of the CARICOM member states.
Mm-hmm.
What has taken place has been a movement on the part of 4 CARICOM nations. That's being the Republic of Barbados. I like the ring of that.
Yeah.
And 3 other states that will allow the free movement of people within CARICOM. Ironically, that includes Belize,
Yeah.
Barbados, Dominica, I believe, and there's one other.
Is it Grenada?
I don't know. But when I got the phone, you can, or even right now as I'm talking, you can Google. And that is drawing closer. And when that will be in effect. That's what that issue of CARICOM. I had the conversations with Glenn. I heard the conversations with with Brother Tarky.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always one term that seems to go missing here. Imperialism, fascism, they're all part of this sort of...
I mean, we brought that up. That was being discussed. But go ahead.
Yeah, no.
Oh, St. Vincent is the other country.
Good. Okay.
St. Vincent is...
Yeah,
and the Grenadines. Right. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is the other. Yeah.
Belize, which is like the farthest west out of all the CARICOM nations, right? And it has a little stronger Latin American, Central American presence in the country. Dominica, Republic of Dominica, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the 4th one again? I think that's it. Belize, Barbados, Republic of
Barbados,
Dominica,
Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent Grenadines. Those are the 4 who have the agreement. Exactly. They have the agreement. Others have sort of pending agreements.
Yeah. No, there's an old statement that, you either hang together or you're going to hang separately.
And it's only Bahamas and Montserrat and Haiti who are not allowing certain types of movements across their countries. Haiti, we understand.
I was saying that, you're either going to hang together or you're going to hang separately.
Well, according to the ambassador of Barbados, Dave Commission, he says, this is about a United States of the Caribbean. Why not an ambition? Why not a movement toward that type of collective consciousness? Not in the same way over here of United States, but that the United States of the Caribbean, probably in the formulation of the CARICOM, and maybe starting with the so-called freedoms of movement that allows people to, go from one country to the next, but with measures of border immigration controls in certain countries. I mean, Bahamas is already doing that. They make it clear they're not against people from the Caribbean coming to Bahamas, but they're not going to have the free movement that Barbados and Belize and St. Vincent have agreed to. So, yeah.
I
think countries, the governments of the Caribbean will have their variations to accommodate their own immigration policies.
Well, I think what Barbados is doing, and the other three, I think it's a movement. Time has come. You know, you're going to hang together. You're going to hang separately. I had to use the term hegemon.
Right now, that's what you're dealing with among the hegemonic powers. I mean, when you're talking about the hegemonic power, the authoritarian powers right now, United States and China.
Yeah.
I mean, China right now, especially, I mean, you look at the Caribbean, China has the Caribbean, I can't call it a stranglehold on the Caribbean, but through their trade agreements, you know, it's through the manufacturing. And just as, of course, China has that, on the flip side is the United States with, of course, the dollar. So, quote unquote, pun intended, who trumps who?
Well, if you look at a map of the color-coded map of the Caribbean, well, more so South America, you'll see that basically highlights the amount of investment that China has basically in South America, right?
Yeah.
They have the greatest amount of trade is between those countries and investments, China and all of those South American countries.
Well, and BRICS has a lot to do with that right now.
Yeah.
Right?
They're making a major port in Peru. I think I said it earlier, a major port in Peru. I don't know, it should be near finished if it's not been completed yet. And the belt, part of the Belt and Road, that will facilitate the movement of goods from the eastern side of the Andes to that port in Peru.
Right.
The export of goods to Asia, China included, of course, and vice versa. Are the Americans going to seek to try to upend that? People need to understand here, especially these sort of Anglo-Saxon black Bermudians. Okay? You hear about the Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine was a geopolitical statement on the part of the Anglo-Americans, or Anglo-Saxon Americans, early in its life as a nation, post-revolution. It sent a message to the European powers that they were to not encroach upon this hemisphere. Why? It wasn't because they were trying to protect any of us. I mean, look what they did to the father of all republics, Prince Haiti. They were in agreement with that. They were opposed to that. And when the French came across and aided by the Germans and others, to blackmail Haiti into paying reparations to France, I might add, because of the loss of property, slaves, and other resources that France had to swallow due to the French Revolution. They had blockades. Did the Anglo-Americans stop that? No. So the aim of the Monroe Doctrine is keep your hands off of this place. We reserve the right to pillage and plunder, steal land, and when necessary, to dominate and treat these people any way we want. You don't want you elbowing in to get a piece of the action.
Right.
And crudely put, that's what it was all about. Look at today I was reading, I think I said it to you as well. How many people here know that you had a terrible genocide in Guatemala in the 70s that was concentrated on the displacement and elimination of tens of thousands of native Guatemalans that even Israel played a part in?
And that was attributed to Guatemala's communist, so-called socialist standing in the global scheme.
They'll throw communist everything out there, social justice, economic justice. Yeah. And it hasn't changed. I mean, what we see with Venezuela is the same thing. So you have someone else now, a non-European power, that they feel threatened by, that is conducting business and trade, some would say in a fairly equitable way, to develop infrastructure, industrialized economies in this part of the world in a way that America has not. America is not about to embark on a system of not only free trade, but fair trade with countries they look down upon. And that's the other thing which I say we have ignored, at least in this conversation. Well, besides terms like imperialism and fascism, authoritarianism, these are sort of the tools of the West. There's also, again, the doctrine, or the ideology, rather, of white supremacy. It's informative. Trump is a white supremacist.
Yeah.
Hands down. Now, the fact if you said that to him one day, he'd probably smile and say, well, I'm so gratified, you know.
Well, not necessarily, because I'm reading, and I don't know how much truth there is to this here. There is some thought right now that if you are traveling to United States, that they can request to see your phone, your data of the last 5 years, and pull it up. And anything that you have on your phone of a meme, example of statement like you just made, can be used against you for entry into the United States. This is something that is under discussion.
Yeah, they're going to be doing that.
And what it speaks to, again, and which is another discussion, it's the surveillance world that we are in. Yeah.
And dominated by tech giants who are also white supremacists.
Yep.
Okay, so when I say Trump is a white supremacist, and if you're in some ballroom and one-on-one conversation with him, he probably would take that as a badge of honor. Only black Bermudians who, even the conversation with, again, like Clarkey. It was always something missing in the conversation. What was it?
Well, let's open up the conversation.
The term white supremacist is what you guys he was describing.
Yeah.
He never said it.
Well, there's not. I already know that's his position on it, though. There's not.
Yeah, but it's always like we're talking like English people. Everything's like indirection. It can't be, direct. So, my grandfather does the same thing.
Well.
So, but this is the evil that this guy Miller, who is Trump's sort of ideological fellow traveler. Like he's like the white supremacist in chief, in other words.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. So and all the Trump is like this big chieftain now. He's going to stand up to the Negroes in America with their DEI and they're the racists against good, upstanding, white Anglo-Saxon people in America. Yeah. Over in the UK, you had a march that was over 100,000 white Englishmen, okay, led by a avowed white supremacist, this guy Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
People talk about this guy Kirk, who was assassinated, right? He was a white supremacist, too. That was the foundation of that Turning Point organization he started. That was the ideological compass by which that organization grew. No denial, unless you're in denial.
I don't think it's in denial.
White supremacist ideology is on the march in the West.
It's front and center. It is the order of the day. And
right.
as the ambassador said, we must find ways to resist. We must find, and I'll say this here. I mean, he pointed it out. I mean, what we see going on in terms of even the UN, when you talk about find ways to resist, we know the Security Council can't help you. I would like to know, and I would ask him these questions, you know, if and when we have the opportunity next week or the week after, which of those UN institutions are the institutions that should be playing a greater role outside of the security institutions of the UN right now? And what role would they play in terms of collectively with the Caribbean nations as a movement toward resistance, supporting them in the context of international law? Because international law really has been, by U.S. actions, has been dismissed. And so everyone is waiting right now to see, everyone is waiting to see, when you look at that war in Russia and Ukraine, well, that's just a foregone conclusion right now. It's just a matter of time for the Russians. Ukraine is not going to win that battle.
I mean, look, in reality,
and the concern is, let me just say this: to throw off the with this action that United States has taken with Venezuela, does it open the door for China with Taiwan? These are all the type of conflicts that will create and add to the instability that people may be experiencing and feeling with this recent attack on Venezuela. More to come. Let me take some other callers.
Okay.
Cool, man. Good night, you on all fronts.
Hey, man, I'm surprised you guys haven't touched base on what's happening with Denmark, man.
Well, hey, it's all relative. Bring it up. I mean, I do see that Denmark now are, as we talk about an example, when you think in terms of the Caribbean, the implications of Venezuela, U.S. attack on Venezuela and its impact on the Caribbean, and you now see the subtle threats, I say subtle threats, of Trump moving in on Greenland, you see Denmark is taking a different action and begin to mobilize its bases or its military.
No, in preparation. They ain't making.
Yeah,
Of course, they are backed by their allies.
Yeah.
Which is supposed to be the U.S.'s allies.
Well, you're talking NATO. You're speaking about NATO.
That's right.
Yeah.
This whole Trump situation, which I have to agree with Rolf, is a whole white supremacist dynamic.
Of course it is. We know that.
Also, it's about keeping the U.S. dollar strong.
Absolutely. Well, United States is a bankrupt country right now.
That's right.
It's no secret to anyone. Every economist knows it.
That's right. It reminds me of what happened to Haiti. What people need to recognize is Haiti defeated Napoleon, and they bankrupted France.
So
France wants to sell Louisiana and the Louisiana Purchase, and that's the reason why the United States became the powerhouse they are today, because it allowed them to take land, because it's all about taking land from the indigenous.
Well, you can
look at all them to go beyond the Rocky Mountains and take the West from the Spanish and ultimately the Native American, right? So it's always been about...
Well, it's from the Native American first, that's for sure.
Well, no, it was from the Spanish, because you know what happened was the Spanish had ruled half of America.
Well, in terms of the rest
of the Native Americans. They left them alone because they couldn't beat them anyway. And the only reason the Americans beat them is because they were wicked enough to kill all the buffaloes, to take their third source. And of course, disease.
Look, just listening to that history, and people may think it's ancient, right?
Yeah, it's not.
But it has in it it has in it all of the arts of war. And you use the example, no, we'll attack their food supply. Well, what do you think this is all about? The trade wars. Let's attack the food supply of people. Right? And I know we are bemoaning our high cost of living, but no, it's all an attack on what is the basics. You know, your shelter, your food.
Well,
so attack the people's food supply.
Yeah. The bottom line is the most racist country in the world is making its move.
Yeah.
And even against its own to become the powerhouse.
Well, my brother, I think
that's all, and that's what we're looking at. So, you know, hey.
I think I'm gonna share and close out on a clip of Nelson Mandela, because he said it eloquently, and as I'm saying as America looks to celebrate Martin Luther King Day, probably this is a message that we all need to listen to, because I think it has current implications. I appreciate you, brother.
I'll be listening in, my brother.
Yeah. Listen up, people. Closing out.
There are 4 hidden messages in what he said.
Hold on.
Listen closely.
As the steward of your affairs.
This is... Okay, hold on. Oh, just a minute, my people. Let me get this right. Where is it to?
Jamaica was pressured to choose a side in the war in Venezuela. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has now given a response. Here are 4 hidden messages in what he said. Listen closely.
As the steward of your affairs and the servant of your wishes is to keep Jamaica safe, not to steer into waters for which we don't have to go.
Jamaica is deliberately staying out of loud global conflicts that don't directly benefit us.
Not to invite problems on ourselves when we have our own problems to deal with.
Strong public positions can affect trade, aid, visas, and diplomatic relationships.
We give God thanks for keeping Jamaica safe in turbulent geopolitical and geoeconomic times.
When he talks about turbulent geopolitical and geoeconomic times, he's admitting pressure exists. Even if the public doesn't see it, bigger powers expect alignment. Jamaica is resisting that quietly.
So what is happening? You know, Jamaica has already taken its position long before others would have sought to enunciate any correct position.
And finally, when he says Jamaica has already taken its position, but doesn't explain it, that's intentional. It suggests the government doesn't believe it owes the public full details on sensitive foreign policy decisions. So this wasn't a vague speech. It was a message indicating that Jamaica will move carefully even if people want louder answers. Jamaica was pressured to choose.
There you have it. So that's a clear statement that the Prime Minister of Barbados, he ain't rushing into anything. But what is clear, whether he is chosen to or not, the U.S. has acted upon freezing visas for Jamaica. Let's see if I can get this next piece on Mandela and close the night out.
Unspeakable atrocities in the world. It is the United States of America. They don't care. They don't care for human beings. 57 years ago, when Japan was retreating on all fronts, they decided to drop the atom bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Killed a lot of innocent people who are still suffering from the effects of those bombs. Those bombs were not aimed against the Japanese. They were aimed against Soviet Union to say, look, this is the power that we have. If you dare oppose what we do, this is what is going to happen to you. Because they are so arrogant, they decided to kill innocent people in
So that is Nelson Mandela. And much of what we, like I said, see going on right now has that historical context. The United States has always seen themselves as the policemen of the Western Hemisphere of the world. They're no longer seeing themselves as the policemen. They see themselves as the enforcers. They see themselves as the dictators. And when we say they, we know not all Americans. We know that. We see what's going on in America right now. The people are beginning to stand up. And there are predictions of a civil war in America. So, my people, the attempt tonight was to place some of this in the context of even our own realities. We're here, like I said, we're here in the North Atlantic. We know that it has implications for us, but I know we feel somewhat far removed from it. But we're not. And as we decide where and what we want to become as members of CARICOM right now are fighting a divided we fall, united we must stand issue. And we heard that in the 30-minute segment we had with the ambassador, David Commission, whom we hope to have on all fronts in the coming week or two. So on that note, let us begin to ask our own leaders, what are their thoughts? We should be, what are the thoughts of our own leaders? And how do they see these events that are going on globally impacting Bermuda? What are the conversations that they're having with the UK leadership on this matter? These are some of the questions that we should be asking of our leaders right now. These are foreign affairs and foreign policy questions, something that we don't talk about too much in Bermuda. We talk about mostly what happens to us locally. So we want to have that conversation coming up in the near future. For all of you, have yourself a safe Wednesday night. And yes, we don't fight on any one front. We fight on all fronts.
Bermuda Live on YouTube. Subscribe now.